January is National Human Trafficking Awareness Month, and I am thrilled today to welcome author Sydney Dunlap to talk about her middle grade book, It Happened on Saturday, that covers this important topic. I'm Tonya Duncan Ellis, host of Write This, my author interview show, and it's my aim each week to bring you interesting stories from children's authors to talk about their journeys. And today, Sydney will talk about her amazing book that covers this important issue. And she sent me an invite, so I'm going to invite her on a few days ago and really enjoyed it. I'm going to send her one invite too. Sometimes when people send me, they don't work. Hey, how are you doing?
Hey, good to see you.
Yeah, thank you so much for agreeing to join me on the show. And I'm happy that it aligned with National Human Trafficking Awareness Month. So this is just
It,
perfect.
it is perfect timing, and it's an honor to be on here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yes, and thank you all who have tuned in as well to join us live for this great topic and wonderful book. So, Sydney, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and about your book?
Absolutely. So I grew up in the DC area. I'm in Houston now. I was a teacher there for a long time. And actually, that's kind of how this all started with my idea for my book. I was watching a movie one night, and it turned out there were some things about trafficking that I hadn't ever heard of it. And I was watching, this flipping channels, and I saw these kids that were hardly older than my students just being screamed at and thrown into a van. And I thought, what in the world is this? This is horrible. So I kept on it till the end, and I realized that this was a reality in our society all over the world, all over our country. And I learned more about it. And I decided I wanted to get involved in the fight. So it wasn't that long after that my husband was transferred to the Houston area for his job. And when we moved, instead of taking a full-time teaching position, I decided I wanted to tutor kids part-time, but get involved in the fight against child trafficking. And I found a lot of opportunities here in Houston. And one of them was being the coordinator for the program going into juvenile detention in the Houston Juvenile Detention Center, talking with young tweens and teens about trafficking and how it looks and what it is. And a lot of them would actually self-identify as survivors, but they had never even heard about it that way. The way it was presented to them, the way they were manipulated, they didn't even realize they were victims of a crime. And I also, around that time, I heard about a 12-year-old girl who was talking to someone online who she thought was another 12-year-old girl, and they both played soccer, and they were sharing all these soccer pictures, and they decided to meet in a park just out here near where I live, just to kick a ball around. And she got dropped off at the park, and then this man who was in his 40s abducted her, and that's who she'd been talking to the whole time. And she had no idea. She'd seen all the pictures, and she thought this was a kid. So I decided, I loved writing. I'd been a member of SCBWI for years and a conference organizer, and studied the craft of writing for so long. And I decided this is the story I need to tell. This is something kids really do need to know about and be aware of. So this is the story that I wrote, and it was out in February of 2023.
Right. And as you shared this, I actually had watched some kind of Dateline type show a couple of years ago about a little boy who met friends online, and he shunned all his friends and then ended up meeting this person and getting killed. And later, someone I'm acquainted with here in Houston knew that boy's family,
Oh my God.
and that she had gone to high school with his parents. And I always talk about him with my sons because they love to be online with video games. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying, you don't know who you're talking to when you're online. They may pretend that they're your age, but they may not
Right.
be.
Right. One of the things, I've been going around to a lot of schools and talking to a lot of young readers. And one of the things I always talk about in the presentation, which focuses on social safety, is that anybody can say anything online. And it doesn't matter how many pictures they have to back it up. They can say whatever they want. So kids can use social media safely, but they have to understand there are these recruiters for traffickers out there who are just looking for them, and they know what to say and they know how to make themselves sound convincing. And I think if kids just go into it being aware, that they can make so much better choices for their own safety.
Right. And the world just seems so much scarier than it was when we grew up, because when I'm reading your book, the kids are being normal kids, but they're not listening to the adults in their lives. And, it's something that, and in your book, the parent, especially the father, wasn't as vigilant. So it's kind of a book even for parents to read, to me, to think, wait a minute, should I be dropping my child off here? I don't know who they're meeting. And, your book was very eye-opening. And can you tell us a little bit about the
Oh,
storyline
sure.
as well?
And thank you so much for kind words about it. So what I set out to do was create a character who would be relatable, and one that kids would say, oh yeah, this could be someone that just goes to my school, or it could be someone in my friend group. Because I think it's important they realize, even though there are definitely kids that like the ones in juvenile detention who I work with, and others that are at higher risk, it can and does happen to everybody from all different backgrounds, all different parts of the country. And it's just so important that I think kids reading it know this could be me, or it could be anybody. Because if the kid is in juvenile detention, or they're in foster care, or one of those other settings, then a reader might say, oh, well, I don't think this would apply to me. I didn't run away from home, or I'm not in that situation. So Julia is a 13-year-old girl who lives in a suburban neighborhood. She honestly is an animal lover. If you said what are her interests, she volunteers at a horse rescue barn, and she takes riding lessons. And she's honestly not quite into the boys and makeup so much as some of her friends are. And she feels a little bit left out because her best friend meets a boy at summer camp and then ends up spending a lot of time with him when she gets back from camp instead of with Julia. So she's understandably disappointed. And two of the other girls in their friend group are twins and have moved away. So Julia's very worried, of course, as 8th grade is about to start, that who am I going to sit with at lunch, and what am I going to do in my classes if my friends aren't here? So she's feeling vulnerable. And her mom is a teacher, actually, and she's really busy with school starting, and her dad has a lot of late work meetings, and her sister just got her driver's license, so she's out and about, very busy with a part-time job and a boyfriend. So Julia's feeling a little bit like, well, what about me? So her sister does have a little time for her one night, and she gives her a makeover just for fun. And Julie is feeling pretty glamorous, after her picture. And she posts one of herself online on social media. And she starts, getting some nice comments from friends and maybe some people she doesn't know. And then she gets a DM from this guy who comments on how gorgeous she is, which of course is pretty nice to hear when you're a 13-year-old girl having somebody call you gorgeous. So she doesn't respond because she feels like, oh yeah, I shouldn't talk to him, I don't know him. But then things keep getting worse. Just with school and with her family, she's feeling more and more left out, and she gets in a little argument with her best friend, and just kind of everything is spiraling down for her so much that she thinks, what's it going to hurt? I can have a conversation. This guy keeps reaching out to me. So she ends up talking with him. And of course, he knows exactly what to say. He knows exactly how to sound interested and to really come across as just a nice guy. So they end up talking quite a bit and eventually meet in person. And she's trying to be very smart about it. She goes to the mall where it's a public place and there's plenty of people around, and doesn't gonna go with him in his car, nothing like that. But she does end up getting lured into a very dangerous situation, and she has to escape. And I very specifically had her escape quickly before anything really happens. The person that he leaves her with is a trafficker, but I have the trafficker on the phone making arrangements for her transportation while she is alone with him. So she does get away before anything actually happens that I think could be too much for this age group. And the second half of the book is the aftermath. She does join a counseling group at her parents' insistence, for kids who've been through traumatic events. And I did really want to make this accessible for kids who've been through all kinds of experiences. So the counseling group is really a variety of different kinds of things that, that kids have gone through, where they need to learn a little bit about how to help themselves through a difficult time. And Julia's journey really becomes finding the courage to tell her friends the truth about what happened, because some of them are talking about, oh, we should meet guys online too, like you did. And they don't know what really happened because she's so humiliated. She just says that her mom told her she couldn't, found out, and she's not allowed to date yet. So they have no idea what could have happened to their friend. So Julia's struggle is that she's got to figure out what kind of person she wants to be. And the humiliation that she feels she's risking by telling these new friends she's met at school the truth, is that more important, or is it more important to do something that could be really hard but could save their lives,
Right.
and could the other kids safe? So she just has to get to that place where she realizes just what kind of decision she wants to make and what kind of person she wants to be.
And I think you did a great job keeping the tension and drama in the story. And as a parent, it was kind of terrifying, because you look at these kids and you want to go, come on, guys, wake up,
For sure.
go get help or whatever. But it's realistic in showing how a child or a tween may, a young teen might react, or even a teenager, I suspect, to this type situation. Now, can you go through the publishing process for this
Mhm.
book? How did it come about to get published? What were steps you
Okay,
took?
so sure. So as I mentioned, I had this idea to write this book, and I spent a lot of time just sort of writing it, and then I was interested in reaching out to agents, but I was still kind of working on it and I wasn't completely finished. And then I went to an SCBWI meeting here in Houston. I had been very involved back in Virginia. I was one of the volunteers for a long time there. But when honestly, I didn't want to have to fight the traffic into downtown Houston. So I kind of put off going for a while.
Mhm.
But then it just kind of worked out that I was like, I've just gotta go and check it out. I know this is a great chapter and I love SCBWI. So I decided I would brave the traffic, and wouldn't you know, there was an agent speaking at
Oh,
King. So
wow.
serendipitous, and her name is Anne Rose. And I met her and I had an opportunity to talk to her about my story, because I honestly just wanted to find out from an agent's point of view, is would this make sense to write a middle grade book on this topic? Because I think there needs to be one, and I have this book that I'm still working on, but I really think the world needs it. But I just kind of was throwing out the subject to see what an agent would say. And it was pretty cool, actually. She was familiar, living in the Houston area, familiar with trafficking, knew what it was, knew how big of a problem it was, and said there's nothing that she knew of out there on this topic at all. And so she just, honestly, she said, send that to me and I will clear off my desk and I will read it.
Oh, yay. And yeah, Houston's one of the biggest
Yeah,
areas of trafficking in the United States, isn't it? Mm.
absolutely. So she was true to her word, and she got back to me like the next, like a day or two
Wow.
later, and did
Oh, oh,
representation. So I was
oh,
really,
that's wonderful. That is awesome. And it's if for those who don't know, SCBWI is the Society of Children's Books Writers and Illustrators. That's the
yeah.
group.
Yes, it's a wonderful organization. And I had been, I mean, I definitely, when it makes it sound like, oh, that was so easy. I had been writing manuscripts and, working on the craft for a really long time, and, had sent out several other drafts of different manuscripts before this. So I don't want it to sound like it was that easy. As I met her, told her about it, and she signed me. It was, I think, all of the steps before that kind of brought me to that point. But it was also very
Mhm.
serendipitous to meet somebody who was immediately interested in the topic.
Okay,
Um,
I'm happy
so,
to hear this.
uh,
Yeah. And it really is, I find, even for myself and all along the path,
mhm,
as you're working as a writer, as a, creative, it is serendipitous with all these little things along the way, even rejections you may have had in the past. It
Mhm.
probably all everything aligned in that moment.
That's really how it felt to me because it was funny. I had lived here a couple years and not gone to SCBWI yet because I just again was not wanting to deal with the routine. But and also just kind of getting settled in a new place and all that. But it was pretty amazing that right around the time I decided, yeah, I should really check this out was what do you know? An agent's coming to this next one. So that was pretty cool. And then after that, as far as the publication process, she as I said, I was still really working on it. I wasn't even completely finished with it. So we did have, a lot of revising to do. And I ended up doing the book is in two parts. And when I originally wrote it, it was just one part, sort of very linear from beginning to end. But it was that next part, the aftermath, that I
Mhm.
still really needed to work on and do. It was the organization Traffic 911 that I was volunteering with sent me to a trauma-informed counseling program that was like it was like a 2-day all-day class, and it was a lot of actual counselors that were there, but they said since you talk with our trafficking survivors and since you're you know delving into this really difficult subject matter with these kids, would you go to this training? And I thought, yeah, of course. It was really it was really important and useful, and it was all these people that have worked with trafficking survivors that I got to hear speak. And honestly, the timing, if we talk about serendipity, was also pretty amazing because that's when I was trying to work on that second part where I had the counseling group and the trauma informed counseling taking place in my character's life. So I felt like I got a nice little course in
Mhm.
in that as well while I was it was great research for the book. And then of course very important to have that information working with the child trafficking survivors.
Right. Now, do any of the kids you work with, have you shared your book with them?
The book, so the book came out um, in February, as I mentioned, and we were actually had to stop going into juvenile detention because of COVID,
Oh,
and
okay.
we're still
Mm.
going back. We are actually hoping to get back in. They've started letting groups back in now, but it did take a pretty long time. It's a sort of a paperwork process that has to be done again, but I will be going back in.
Mhm.
So that's an interesting, yeah, that would be interesting to share with them for sure. Yeah.
Mhm. That's cool. Yeah, this is such a blessing that you're able to share your passion in this way and help kids and families with your story.
Thank you.
Yes.
I really, it just feels like everything kind of came together because I was a teacher for so long and I worked with a lot of at-risk kids in other volunteer capacities, anti-trafficking, but some other things too. And it just kind of put that with my love of writing all together. It just felt like,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
things come together, I think, for us.
Now, when I saw you at SCBWI, you mentioned that you were revising another book. So, what is your upcoming project? Can you share
Yeah, I
anything about that?
announced recently, so I can share
Oh,
everything. It's called Racing the Clouds, and it's about a 13-year-old girl. I like writing that upper middle grade because there's so many amazing middle grade books out there. I just sometimes feel like there aren't as many for that age group, kind of hinging on YA, but not quite there yet. So anyway, that's where I'm drawn, I think, to writing. And her name is Sage, and she actually has a tough situation going on too. It's very different than Julia's situation, but she blames herself for an accident that happened that led to her mom's opioid addiction. And
oh. Oh.
she has there's a family estrangement. She's never met her grandparents, her mother's parents, ever, but they reach out to her and she decides to go visit them with the idea that she can fix what's gone wrong in the family, and she really also wants to help her mom get back with her parents. And so she travels, flies by herself. She lives in Virginia and flies to Ohio and has a visit with these strangers, which I thought was an interesting concept to write about, like strangers in your family.
Mhm.
That was something that I wanted to explore. So it's a very character driven book as well. And she really learns a lot about the complexity of family relationships and just the power of forgiveness, both for herself and others, and just kind of that things, there's so many shades of gray when things happen. There's things are so much more complex than we often realize.
You know
And she learns a
what?
lot.
You know what? I just read a book called, I think it's called Almost Like Home,
Yeah.
and novel in verse, and it was where the main character, before I read your book, and her parents had drug addiction, and then she went and stayed with her aunt. So that's interesting.
Okay, I haven't read
Mhm.
that one. I've seen it. I've
Mhm.
seen the cover. It's got a
Mhm.
beautiful cover. It's on my radar, so I'll have to check that one out. It sounds like a good one.
Mhm.
Um,
It's good.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
good. Yay. Well, and so yeah, basically I think she learns a lot too about resilience and how she can handle what's going to happen. She gets a lot of more confidence, I think, in herself and her ability to handle a tough situation. And it ends on a note of hope as well.
Mhm.
I think it's so important for these tough topic books to end with hope and have a lot of heart in them, and friendship and family and funny moments, lighter moments too, so that the whole book isn't just like really serious, but it's got other things in it too.
And it seems like you've really caught on to a lot of these contemporary topics that are topical and that things that are people need to know about. So this is very good. Yeah.
Oh, thank
Mhm.
you. It's interesting because when I was a kid, I loved reading about this kind of stuff. Even in like fourth and fifth grade, I wanted, Judy Blume and those books that were not afraid to talk to kids about things that some people might say, oh, they're only 10, they don't need to know about this yet, or, we're not going to tell them about that. I mean, I loved, all the books that were just kind of fun, escapist as well. But I was mostly drawn, I think, as my favorites to these ones that just weren't afraid to go there and get into topics, that might be a little bit harder
Mhm. Mhm.
and that never talked down to the reader. I loved like Catherine Patterson. I remember The Great Gilly
Oh, I
Hopkins was
like
one of
that. Yeah, I like
because
that. Mhm.
how Gilly does something and she gets so mad and she sends that letter and she basically completely sabotages her future and shoots herself in the foot. But then she has to deal with the consequences of that and she realizes that she can, but it's like it doesn't have like this ending that you expect. Oh, she gets to stay with the foster care home that she loves. She can't. She has to leave because of what she did. And it's like it was so
Mhm.
real. Even as a
Mhm.
kid, when I was reading it, I just thought I just liked how it didn't sugarcoat the world.
Right, right. So that's good. Now, what are your next things you're working on?
Well, right now I think I'm still kind of immersed in Racing the Clouds.
Oh,
I'm doing on that as we speak. I'm still going to have a few rounds of revisions with that one. So
right.
I'll have to see what comes. I would say I do have ideas, lots of ideas. I have, oh my gosh. I think a lot of us authors could say that, right? We just have millions of ideas and you just kind of have to zone in on one and
Right, right.
I
And I had made an Instagram reel where I had like a magic wand and hit my computer and the book was done. That's what
yeah,
I want to happen.
wouldn't that be amazing?
Have all our ideas and the books would just churn right
Yeah, that's
out.
pretty cool. Because sometimes I start thinking about, writing for other age groups and I think about, but I really have more that I want to say to this age group. So yeah, there's just, there's not unlimited time in a day, but I guess, hopefully there's lots of time to in the years ahead to keep going.
And then you have a great voice for this age group. So you have that voice, and I felt like it was very realistic in the book that I've read.
Oh,
So I'm looking forward to reading your next book.
well, I appreciate it much. I will tell you something I did. I was tutoring a girl exactly the same age as Julia while I was writing it. So I was talking to her a lot and other kids too that I was tutoring. But there was one girl especially who just kind of reminded me exactly of, the type of kid. And then the other thing I did is I will watch sometimes like on Netflix, like the Babysitters Club. If you
Yes, I like that too. Yeah.
it's such a cute show and it's like you can just listen to the kids talking to each other and it's just so realistic
Mhm.
and I think that helps too, just putting on different things where you're just hearing kids out loud speaking.
Right, right. I was sorry when that show was
Me,
canceled because I think it had a couple of seasons. I really liked them.
I know, right? And that's the thing, I love reading the middle grade books. I just really enjoy them, not just like, oh, it's research and I need to do this because I'm going to be writing another one. It's no, I enjoy them. They're so good. But then I
Mhm.
like watching those shows too. They're
Yeah,
good.
yeah, they are. They are.
Yeah.
Well, Sydney, I want to thank you so much for joining me and for talking about your book, talking about this important issue that I think your book's going to help a lot of kids and families, like I've said earlier, to become aware of what's going on and think about ways to protect our children, most of all. So thank you for creating this.
Well,
And,
thank you so much. Oh, sorry.
oh, no, sorry.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. And I really appreciate your kind words about it. I'm glad you enjoyed this story. And yeah, it's like so great to be on here and
Yeah.
talking with
And
you.
even though it was a tough topic, the way you wrote it made it interesting and enjoyable to read as well. It wasn't just like a dry, slug going. It was like enjoyable too when you had the other moments with her friends, her horse, and all these other different things going on. So I think it will be appealing to the kids as they're learning about this topic.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, the horse stuff was really fun for me to write. I was that was my first job too, in a barn taking care of horses in exchange for writing lessons. And so that was a long time ago, but I still remember it because I loved it so much. So that was fun to put
Yes,
in.
yes. Now, where can people reach you and buy your books?
So they're anywhere online that books are sold. And I know they've got, if anyone is here in the Woodlands, Buy the Book is where I launched. They're a wonderful independent bookstore. And I know they've got it, and I know they had it at the Barnes and Noble at River Oaks. And so I don't know. It's in different brick and mortar stores, but definitely online anywhere.
Okay. Great. Okay. Well, thank you again for your time and for sharing your gifts with us today. Thank you, everybody who has tuned in, and we'll see you next week for another episode of Write This.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.